I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Let the record reflect that all members of council are present and accounted for this evening. We'll begin with our review of the minutes of our regular meetings of January 5th and January 10th of 2022. Any discussion, amendments, changes to the minutes as presented to the council? All right, hearing none, they will be up for your approval on Monday evening. Next, I'll ask the council if they are conflicted on anything on the agenda this evening.
No, sir.
No, sir.
Very good. We'll open it up to the floor for the gallery. If there's any public comment on non-agenda items, anything not on the sheet is open for discussion. The lack of a gallery tells me there's a lack of public comment.
I think there's nobody here, right?
Next, we have up for introduction Monday evening, Ordinance 01-2022. This is the FY 2021-2022 Budget Amendment Number 2. I'm going to ask staff, Mr. Wieprick, to guide us in that discussion.
Okay. So on the general fund portion, we're going to start out with, we have seen an increase over budget in assessed value, assessed property assessments, tax revenue. So that's to the tune of $83,782. So that's an increase in our revenue beyond what we projected with the budget. We are going to move $12,000 out of the police impact fee to be able to spend that farther down the page. Also, we've got a correction to the budget for the county tax differential. That was trying to think if that's a revised figure from the county, or I'll have to clarify that on Monday, what that 4,800 is. So basically, we're going to be increasing our revenues by 116,126. That's offset by an increase in expenses for the same amount. The expenses are going to be salary adjustments in the police department to the tune of roughly $14,400. That's to hopefully aid in retention, officer retention, payroll taxes associated with that, and consulting engineering of $12,000. That's what we're moving the money out of police impact to be able to cover. So we would like to pursue concept design for renovations and expansion to the police department. As the force has grown, it's getting a little bit tight in the report room. Officer workstations are kind of crowded, and there's only one restroom for the guys. So there are some operational issues that the chief would like to address as far as the layout of the department. So we want to have some schematic work done by an architect to see what we would be looking at to add some features, make some renovations, and possibly do it most likely will be an expansion to the building, but also some changes with the interior layout. So that's what that $12,000 would be for. Let's see. Under the streets department, we talked about this a few months ago. We purchased a skid loader that wasn't originally budgeted. We were having some issues with the piece of equipment that we had and how it operated with the accessories that we already had in the shop. It wasn't a good pairing, so we decided to go ahead and get rid of the old skid loader and replace it. So that's what that $67,000 is for streets. And parks, we had, as you know, just recently demolished the building at Festival Park on Stumptown Road, and that was something that we kind of accelerated because we were seeing more issues with vandalism and trespassing out there. So we decided to accelerate taking that building down. It wasn't originally budgeted for this year. So that's why that one's on there. Jumping over to the utility fund. We've decreased what we were going to take out of fund balance because instead of pursuing the rehabilitation of the elevated water tank as a capital project. We've now awarded that contract to Southern Corrosion, and that expense is being amortized over a period of years. So with us going into that long-term contract with Southern Corrosion, it's no longer going to be treated as a capital expense, so we're not going to hit fund balance for that one. On the expenditure side, again, we're basically taking that water tank project out, so we're decreasing our expenditures by $200,000. And we've adjusted the budget because we didn't budget for the $27,000 in MDE fines that we paid earlier in the year. So really, that's just kind of some cleanup to offset that. So I hope that's a decent summary for you all. If anybody has questions, I'll do my best or get answers for Monday.
The amount that you said for architectural design and what have you for the police department,
Yes.
you said would eventually, excuse me, involve an expansion of the building?
Most likely,
So we're looking at another expense for that
yes.
down
This
the
would,
road?
right, this would just be a conceptual design. It's not going to be, basically it's going to be a concept plan and a construction price estimate for the improvements. So to develop the actual construction drawings would be a whole nother fee. This is really just to get a ballpark of if we want to add a sally port so that when we have, suspect that we need to, detainee that we need to get into the building, that we can do so within a secure area. There's been talk of the chief would like to have some additional storage for found property and some larger items that are currently taking up space within the department. And there are some things that are maybe a little bit more wish list-like, but there's been talk of maybe having a larger conference room to be able to do more large-scale trainings. So at this point, it's just going to be working with an architect to come up with some basic ideas and price out what it would take, what it would cost to actually build that. So it's not a full-blown set of architectural drawings that we could take out to bid. That would be another expense down the road. This is more to let us figure out what it's going to cost and when we can, so we can prioritize that and see when in the capital improvement program it could possibly fit in. And it may not
Okay.
be in the 6-year program, it may be farther out.
I would think much farther out. We can't hire police officers, we can't keep police officers, yet we need more space.
And this certainly is projecting being fully staffed, yes.
Which we've needed more space for a couple of years down there with as many officers as we've had.
Mr. Mayor.
Are we,
I don't think, well, like you said, it'll end up on the capital improvement. And I'm thinking this is much, much further down the road. You got other issues with the police, as does the rest of the world.
are we putting together an RFP to determine an architect, or are we going to?
We had received a proposal a while back, but didn't move forward because we weren't sure because we hadn't budgeted for it. So that proposal was to cap out at 10,000, so that for professional services, that's kind of the limit. We don't need to do an RFP for that, but when adding the construction cost estimate to that, it probably will come in a little bit over 10,000.
Right.
That's why we put 12 in there. So it will be something that you will have to approve.
Right, okay. Councilman Haynes?
Are we going to have another opportunity to discuss this expenditure? Because I do have questions about it, but I don't want to get hung up when we're just trying to.
It depends what expenditure you have questions about.
About the concept itself and what the police department is looking for. So I
That'll
feel like
come
maybe.
later.
Okay,
Yeah,
I just want to make
that'll
sure
come
we'll
much
have
later.
another opportunity to have that conversation.
Right, they're just simply moving money from one place to another to cover this under consulting engineering, just to get an idea of what they can do with their building and what's going to be the best use of space with what's there versus what needs to be added on. I think it goes along with all the other decisions we need to make. The more information we get, the better decisions we can make. I think $12,000 to find out future-wise what we need to do to make that a better facility is really more than appropriate, in my opinion, to make sure that we're well-versed in what needs to happen.
And Mr. Mayor, I'd agree with that because I think it's important that we do look ahead. I mean, we do have new residential developments that are going to be coming in. We have residential developments that are finishing out. And we know that as our last time I got a population count, we were well over 7,200 people. So it's important that we do prepare for the inevitable population growth that will come. Not to mention the new roads and new coverage that we're going to have to provide for residents.
As this isn't the only new building we need, Public Works needs a new building too.
There's no
While we're
doubt.
at it, why don't we put in a proposal what it'll take to bring that up?
I think we can absolutely, if you would like to put out to find out what needs to happen for them, I'm all for it.
I
Do we
would.
have, would that same amount of money, do you think, cover that as well? If we put another of that amount of money, could we get similar information regarding Public Works? Although it would be a much larger building, I would think.
I'd be hesitant to answer that because
Right.
with Public Works, we're not looking at a renovation, we're looking at a brand-new building.
Correct, right.
So I know we've, just through our engineer, gotten some price points for, X number of square feet with a certain finish and, how much is shop versus office. But I can,
That needs
I
to
can, I can
be
find out.
included in the capital improvement.
Right. I can find out by Monday if we'd be talking about the same ballpark or not.
Okay. I think overall facilities, city facilities are lacking overall in the city. I mean, the annex is not the most ideal place to have city employees. It wasn't made for what it's being used for. City Hall is slightly better since the renovation, but still we're kind of shoehorning everything in here. If we have any need in the near future to add staff, we have literally nowhere to put them in any of these buildings. And that's a concern. We're already spread out among 4 different places, and none of them are really adequate for what we have, let alone what we could have, should have, maybe. So that's definitely a broad discussion that needs to be had. If we can tackle them one at a time, I know with police, they're doing this because they have money out of their impact fees that they can spend on this project. We should know what it's going to take to get a similar concept for Public Works. I think those are the most dire issues we have regarding facilities at this time. If we can get a number for that and then determine how we're going to make that happen. But I agree with Councilman Foster, Public Works is desperately in need of a building, and I don't know where they are is even going to fit the building that they really need it to be. So we're gonna have to look at that creatively and come up with a good solution. But agreed. Are there any comments on that from the council? Is there disagreement on that topic? Has everyone seen the Public Works facility down there?
Well, I think Randy's probably already done a lot of research on what they can get and what will work for them.
Right.
So,
And we definitely need to come from a professional who deals with that every day as well. So the nice thing is they've had plenty of time to stew it over and figure out what they want to have.
Yep.
That just needs to be communicated. So with that, I'll instruct staff to come back with some sort of figure to make that happen. And we can get that hopefully somewhere on its way. Any other questions on the budget amendment as presented to you this evening? Okay. That will be up for introduction on Monday evening. Moving on, up for adoption on Monday will be Resolution 2022-02. This is our monthly water allocation for February. Are there any questions, concerns, mathematical errors found?
The math adds up.
The math adds up.
Joe, you got me pulling out my calculator.
I do mine longhand.
Will influence on people. All right, any other questions? Everyone's good on the water allocation? Very good, that'll be up for your adoption on Monday evening as well. Next, we'll go back to Mr. Weeprick for his city manager report. What do you have for us this evening, sir?
Okay, so as we discussed on Saturday, we've pretty much finished up the ARPA portion of the capital improvement program. We are still trying to fine tune some numbers, particularly with the larger projects that involve replacement of infrastructure, including roads, where we have pavement involved. But again, that should be finished up for next month. That is the entire CIP. Sewell annexation, everybody's signed finally. So that's some good news there. So we can move on to the next step. Let's see, Trevanian Terrace, work's going on. I think it's finished by now. I'll find out tomorrow when we have our progress meeting. But work was going on the emergency spillway and work to correct the wall that was too tall in the diversion structure closer to the school is scheduled. So we're getting close on that one. Let's see, nothing really new on COVID to report other than obviously we don't have our plexiglass barriers up and we're not wearing masks today. So good news there. Meadowbrook Interceptor, contract documents were all signed, and just today we received the grading permit from the county. So we signed off on that for our component, and hopefully that will be issued in the next day or so. Aside from the things that are on the chart month after month, we're in the midst of our departmental budget meetings, so everybody has submitted their department budget. Barry and I are meeting with each department to kind of run through things, and then we will be meeting with the mayor on Friday to kind of give him the first run through and talk through things and refine it at that point. And let's see. So we are looking forward to the 23rd for our budget workshop. We are still working on trying to finalize some numbers on capital projects with the Department of Public Works. So a couple days behind schedule on that as far as getting that to Barry, but we should be good for Friday, so chugging along. The sewer cleaning and televising that was awarded last month, they are already in town and have already started work. They're currently in the Tawny Village, Cloverberry area. So far, it's been going very smoothly. Public Works has been very happy. The interaction with the contractor's been very good. And so far, the lines have been, at least at first look, appear to be good candidates for relining rather than replacement for the sections that have been done so far. So that's encouraging. The last thing I've got, the construction surety for Meads Crossing Phase 1 and 1A, the developer is looking for to reduce that. So as for those of you who haven't been around for this process yet, when a development is approved, the developer posts a bond or letter of credit as surety to make sure that if something fails with the project, that there's money available for us to complete whatever portion we think is necessary. That may cover things like erosion and sediment control. So if they strip all the topsoil and then walk away from the job, we can tap into that money to stabilize the area, to seed and straw it and things like that. So with recent projects, we've required the bulk of the surety to be put in place when the project connects to the city infrastructure in some way with water, sewer, storm drains. So as the infrastructure is completed, the amount of surety we have to hold can be reduced. In recent times, we haven't had as frequent of requests from developers to do that. But with Meads Crossing, we do have a request before us. And unfortunately, the bond renewal would happen right before our Monday meeting. So we are going to authorize them to go ahead and reduce their bond renewal by the agreed upon amount and just come to you Monday night to ratify that. Much like we've been doing on the front end with the Public Works Agreement, where that surety is established. We've executed those, the mayor signs them, and then we come to you to ratify them at the next meeting. So we don't have to wait necessarily, 3 weeks for the next meeting. So the timing of this just was such that it simply doesn't make sense to have him renew it for the full amount for like a 3-day window and then come back and reduce it. So trying to be a little flexible there. And with that, that's about it for my report.
All right. Any questions for the city manager on his report or the departmental reports as they're presented to you this evening? Okay. Hearing none, thank you very much. We're going to move into our legal report. Mr. Gullo, what do you have for us this evening?
Good evening, everyone. Tonight, we're going to talk about the email I sent out with a package earlier this week about the PFA lawsuit. And so I don't want to get too deep in the weeds, but I want to just give you the overview so that it's in the public record at least. You recall many years ago, the city was involved with a lawsuit for MTBE. That is a chemical that was put into gasoline products and then leached into the ground, not necessarily just here in Taneytown, but like nationwide, and affected the groundwater. And a class action lawsuit was brought by national lawyers against the manufacturers of those because they could have manufactured that product without including the MTBEs. And so Taneytown was approached because we had some MTBEs in our wells, but they weren't over a high level. They were just there, and they shouldn't be. So people, and I'm not going to name the defendants because I make it up, but like the producers of gasoline and things like that. So we got on board with this lawsuit. We didn't really have to do much except for provide information about our wells and things like that. And we used a conduit where the law firm worked through me, and I kept you informed. And at some time later, it wasn't instant, but maybe a year later or so after doing it, we won a settlement. It was a settlement like all class actions are, court-ordered, court-awarded, and I sent you all, one of my happiest moments was where we gave the big check for $400,000 that the city won. We actually won closer to 600 and some thousand, but we paid the lawyers, which was the deal. We don't have to pay anybody unless we win, and the net to us was $400,000. So it was positive the whole way around. The end of that story was the MTBE level was not high enough that we ever really had to do any treatment. So this was for treatment if we ever needed it, but it went into our general fund. So with that history, the new thing on the horizon is PFA, and that stands for perfluoroalkyl substances. They also call them AFFF, which is like aqueous foam. Think about firefighting foam. Okay, when you see them using foam, looks like shaving cream, bubble bath, that type of thing. So these substances were placed in these materials by the manufacturers, and they knew at the time that they were forever chemicals. They weren't things that would break down in nature. And as of now, they don't put them in there. So the theory was they didn't need to put them in there. These aren't everywhere. They're where foam might have been used. So airports, military bases, firehouses, along the highways, wherever you might have used that type of stuff, and then it leached into the ground and finally got into the groundwater. And so, as we get more sophisticated as a nation, we start looking at the contaminants in our water and saying they need to be cleaner and cleaner and cleaner. So the EPA issued a warning standard, saying there is a certain level that we're concerned with if the PFAs are in your water. When the warning letter becomes a MCL, maximum contaminant level, then it's something that we have to take out of the water before we can allow it to be consumed. And we do that with tons of stuff, lead, MTBE, things like that. The bad news for us is that the PFAs are in our water, in some of the water wells around here. The good news is we're not the worst in the state. but we're not the best either. There's some that don't have it at all. So with that situation on the horizon, knowing that we may have to do something, and we may not, we may be below whatever contaminant level they say is okay, but with knowing that we could, there is a national lawsuit again about recovering money from the producers of these products that had PFAs. So there's several law firms nationally that are looking at this. And I talked to representatives of the two big ones and, of course, was favored to go back to the people that already did well for us, Buds and Barron, because they did well for MTBE. And they would happy for us to sign up to be part of the lawsuit. The overall deal is, just like before, they're going to get 25% of any recovery. They pay for everything. If we don't have a recovery, we don't pay anything, and we get the net check when it's over. In the past, we got that $400,000 check. That was like the first round because like there's lots of different manufacturers, and so some settle early and then some settle late. We also got another $60,000 about from the MTBE lawsuit. So it could be that this continues to pay. The city is likely facing something because we don't know what the level will be that we're going to have the water cleaned to. You recall it wasn't MTBEs, but it was another contaminant on well 13 that had to be air stripped out because of a welding product got into it, brake cleaners, that kind of thing. It costs a lot of money for carbon filters and things like that. So there is really no expectation that if we wait until we find out what we're going to do, that we, the city of Taneytown, are going to sue these people and get a recovery for us. That is, it sounds great, but that's not it. You'd be paying too much. So the best route is to get on board with one of these class actions and get a recovery, know that that money comes into the city, and then we were made whole in advance. City of Westminster's involved. There's a whole bunch of municipalities involved. I sent you more stuff than you could ever want to know about that. There was federal law tried to be put in place for this. I sent you a National Review article. That's largely not going to go anywhere. More law because of politics than reality, but the judicial system will go. So what I'm asking you to do on Monday is agree to get into the lawsuit, and you'll do that by adopting the legal services agreement with Buds and Barron and all the rest of the names that are on there. You've seen it. It basically says that the things I just told you. I would be their conduit. And then the agreement, there's another agreement that allows me to work with them and creates a contingent fee arrangement with me so that you're not investing money on something speculative. Everybody gets paid if it happens. And in all likelihood, it will happen to some extent. So that's what I need you to do on Monday if you want to get in on this. This has been around since 2020. People have been talking about getting this lawsuit together. While it's not critical that you have to do it Monday, there will be a critical date where it's too late. And my opinion of what we need to do isn't going to change. So you can wait for a couple months, but I'll still come back saying we should go to Buds and Barron, and these are the paperwork. So what I wanted to get, because I will not be here to participate Monday, is if there's any questions you have for me. It seems like a no-brainer for us, but I want you to be completely comfortable.
Questions from the council?
I guess I have more of a general question, right? So, I mean, this is something that we are currently dealing with and treating, or
No,
what
you're
is
not
the-
treating it. It's there. It has shown up in your wells because, I mean, not all your wells, but MDE, it came on their radar in about 2020. And they said, we need to start testing for it because MDE is studying the issue because there is no level to treat it to. And I'm making it up. These are, when you start talking about these levels, they used to use parts per million. These are parts per trillion. Okay, so like if you find 43 parts in a trillion parts, that's what they're talking about. They haven't set what that number is, so we wouldn't know whether to treat, maybe ours is 50 and the limit would be 80, so you're okay. It'll never be zero.
Well, right.
Right,
So
right.
to that point, though, is there any immediate public health hazard that we have to contend with? This is just something that is occurring and we have to deal with it. But there's no immediate concern for the public.
Right, there's no health hazard. It is an existing condition that has existed for some time. We're just getting aware of the situation.
There's no health hazard that they know of.
That they know of, right. Just like,
As I was reading this, I thought Michigan.
right. Michigan was led, and Michigan was led with the contaminants. Before 1993 or 4, there was no lead or copper, because lead pipes were used. So the water you actually do leaches the lead out. But there was no level there, and now there was a new level for that. The big ones that have always been there are the fecal coliform and things like that run out from the farms. So this isn't like you need to boil your water, because it's not going to come out if you boil your water, I doubt.
I just wanted to make sure, I mean, I'm all for participating in the lawsuit. I just wanted to make sure there wasn't anything we had to do immediately otherwise for the benefit of public health.
And that information would come to us from the EPA as they define the standards, what's acceptable and what's not. And of course, Public Works will address that appropriately when the time comes. I think at this point, since we don't have any red flags in front of our face, we're just gonna have to trust that there is no current health hazard. I think joining the class action suit is in the best interest of the city for sure, especially if it does come down the road that there has to be a mitigation, that we have the funds that came to us to take care of it. So Monday evening, we will be looking for that decision from the council.
That's it. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to me. This isn't going to be something I'll brief you on every month. This stuff takes time, but we'll keep you adept what you need to know. And then the Sewell hearing is scheduled for April, whatever day I told you it was. It's the work session day. The advertisements will start running in March for that. I anticipate that the Sewells will be here, and it may be helpful that they're going to have a presentation. That's something you'll have to decide, other than us doing the presentation or working with them. But there needs to be a little background and some diagrams, because people might actually come up to the hearing and you want to know what's going on. So that's on the way out. We still are in the public comment period. We're submitting or have submitted the annexation plan to the state and to the county, and then we'll get comments back on that.
Did we submit a waiver to the county on the 5-year rule?
We said we would. We have not. We put the burden on them to do it.
Okay.
And so
We don't know when the
them being
county-
applicant.
Okay, we don't know when the county might, well, we don't even know if that's before the county for them to make that decision.
We would have to be involved in that, and we felt that since they wanted it, and we've asked this before, that we will cooperate and help, but we haven't seen any traction. My impression for you is everybody still wants this to happen, but it's like normal. They want it to happen when they come in here and they say, oh, this has to happen now, and then there's not a lot of follow-up and fire at that point in time.
Right.
For lots of different reasons. But we told them when the hearing was, we told them this is set, and if they don't participate, you can take that as
What it is.
information also, so.
Okay. Any questions for the city attorney on his report? Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Moving into our new business for the evening. Number 1, we have our monthly financial support submitted to you in your packets. Are there any questions or concerns regarding that report? All right, that will be up for your approval on Monday evening. And the same for the accounts payables. Any questions, comments, concerns? Okay. Once again, Monday evening. And then we're going to round it out with some awarding of bids. As you can see, city staff has been very busy collecting bids. We opened a lot of bids, and now it's going to be coming before you. The first is cleaning services for city offices, being the police department, city hall, and the annex. There were 4 bids received, and the recommendation is to award the 3-year contract to Multicorp Incorporated, and that cost was $17,185. Are there any questions from the council on that bid? All right, that will be in front of you on Monday for approval. Our next bid is for the tennis courts and basketball court. If you recall, this was one that we chose to rebid after the initial round had some issues with what was received. This time around, we received 5 bids as opposed to the original 2. And the recommendation is to award it to Mid-Atlantic Asphalt for $84,870. Any questions from the council?
I just want to compliment Lorena for the depth of the memo that she sent to us. It was good to have all that background information. So I just want to commend her for that.
Very good. All right. If satisfied, that will come before you Monday evening as well. The next award of bid is for street sweeping. There were 3 bids received, and the recommendation from Public Works is to award the 3-year contract to Riley Sweeping. And that was in the amount, it was per curb mile, of monthly sweeping $198 and yearly $175. Any questions on that one? I will ask the city manager, there's been some discussion among staff about re-expanding street sweeping. Is that still a discussion that we wish to have?
We would. Several years ago, the no parking on street sweeping days signs were taken down for York and Frederick Street and East and West Baltimore streets, with the exception of the metered areas. So consequently, cars are parked on those state roads that are swept monthly, with the exception of the downtown area. We're not, the street sweeper, even though they make multiple passes, are not able to clean the streets effectively. We still have a lot of leaf debris in the gutters because there were consistently cars parked in certain spots that just they can't get to. And we would like to consider putting the signs back up. Obviously, doing a lot of outreach and notification to make people aware that, this is coming back, that, they will have to move their cars off the street on every 3rd Monday, as we did years ago. We're just seeing that the result of people parking there is that, we're not getting the streets as clean as we used to.
Right, and we're paying the same amount and our streets are not
We
getting
pay the
nearly
same
as
amount
clean.
per mile, whether cars are parked there or not, so.
Right. So I definitely see the impact of that. As you drive down, you definitely see they're not as clean as they used to get. Are you expecting a recommendation from Public Works on that topic in the future? Or do you wish to have a decision from council Monday evening regarding that?
If we could decide Monday evening, that gives us that much more time to start getting the word out.
Okay.
So it's not, doesn't need to be anything, well, I suppose a motion and vote gets it in the minutes.
Right.
So, but that is the Public Works recommendation. They would like to see us return to no parking all along the state roads.
Okay. What I'd like to see then for Monday evening, if possible, is the area in which they wish to do that, between what streets and on what streets, and then also their plan for getting the word out. Whatever methods they wish to use, that way we know how it's going to go out and we can help coordinate whatever way possible.
Will do.
Okay. And you can throw that on for new business on the Monday evening agenda, Madam Clerk. Any other questions on the street sweeping bid? Okay. Next, we have our solid waste and recycling. The 2 bids were received for that one, and the recommendation from Public Works is to award the 5-year contract to Ecology Services. That is the company we currently have and have had for a couple of years. Any questions, comments, or concerns about that?
Well, I know over the years we've had some complaints about them. We've had some concerns about them from a number of residents. And I know some of the issues have been addressed, and I'm sure that others have been addressed too. I'm just wondering if the overall consent or the overall feeling from the city is that they are worth pursuing for another 3 years, given the complaints that we've received.
In my opinion, looking at the bids received, we can't justify going with the other option, considering it is more than double the price. My understanding is that other companies who had initially said they might bid were looking at having to do it over multiple days, as opposed to 1 day a week like we do now. I don't feel that the city is really that large to justify that, let alone the mass confusion that it would cause by telling people what days they're going to be on. We have received a number of complaints about this company. I myself have complained about this company. Most recently, the debacle regarding Christmas tree pickup just continues to lead to my discontent for this company. But all that considered, when their price is less than half of the other bidder and we're only given 2 options, we need to consider what we want to do with that. And that's where the discussion is at this point. So there's always the option, which we've exercised in the past, that we try it again. We put it back out for bid, and maybe we want to entertain a multi-day pickup if you want to create that sort of situation in the city.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
may I ask, do you think a multi-day pickup would really be that confusing? I wonder if it would be convenient for people to be like, well, I missed it today, but instead of waiting until next week, I can just put it out.
But they can't just put it out because it's going to be split up by sections.
Oh,
Right.
I missed
So
that
it's
part.
going to be,
Yeah.
these
Okay.
streets will be on Tuesday, these will be on Wednesday, these will be on Thursday.
Gotcha.
And a lot of it is, you see a lot of those companies are so spread, are spread so thinly now, especially with the difficulty in finding people, that in order to fit us into their other contracts, they're just going to have to spend less time per day in the city. Do I think it's going to be that confusing? We still have people struggling with the fact that it's every Wednesday, regardless. I think it would be. I think it would require a lot of effort on the city's part to inform people and make sure that it's not confusing. But I can tell you now, there's going to be some pains if we go that route. And your voicemail will be blown up to smithereens from it.
Could you shine some light on the issues that have been corrected so far with the company that we're leaning towards?
Consistently corrected. I feel, and I don't have the numbers to back it up because we really don't track the complaints. I feel like we probably should. We get more complaints over damaged trash receptacles, complaints of the receptacles being left in the road, not returned to the sidewalk.
Sections of town being missed completely.
Sections of town, single houses being missed. Some people believe that the contractor is extremely picky when they pick up the trash, like they'll only empty your can if the right color bag is on top or something like that. It's very odd. Sometimes they simply reach in, grab a bag out, and there's still things in the bottom. Like they don't physically pick up the can, dump it in the truck. There's a myriad of complaints. And it's very possible that those same complaints existed before the virus that is social media came about. I mean, we definitely hear a lot more about it on Facebook than what we used to. Overall, though, you'll hear people say, I liked it better when we had so-and-so. I agree with them. So-and-so is very expensive, and right now they did not submit a bid.
I don't think it's a bad idea to reopen the process, try to rebid, but if we do go with these guys again, I do think it is a good idea to try to keep a better log of complaints.
I agree with that. I spoke to the Public Works to work with IT about creating some sort of logging system where they can track some complaints. If it's the same complaint from the same person, maybe there's a different issue at play. And that goes for complaints throughout the city, honestly. I mean, the more we can log those and keep track that we can better identify the problem, the better. I feel based on the last couple of years, if we do choose to go with this contractor again, there needs to be a meeting in place prior to the start of this contract between Public Works, the city manager, and myself, and make very clear what our expectations are and the penalties accordingly. There is in the contract a penalty that we can invoke that I don't believe we've done it yet. Is that correct, Mr. Weeprick?
Correct.
Right. And that's something we're going to have to be a little more stern with. If you don't recall, we had scheduled with them to pick up Christmas trees, and that day came and passed, and no Christmas trees were picked up by the company. They had an issue with their email calendar, and they just simply didn't come out. Fortunately, city staff was able to come out and pick it up before the big snow hit the following day, and it was taken care of, but it's frustrating.
So, Mr. Mayor, if I might, is it possible that we delay the awarding of a bid pending a meeting that you and city staff would have with ecology and say, hey, we have these issues, we want them worked out? I mean, is it possible to delay the awarding of the bid for a month or two?
Well, generally with the bids, they put on there that these numbers are good for so long. And I don't know what they are specifically on these bids. Generally, you'll see from companies that anywhere from 30 to 60 days that they'll hold those numbers. At this point, it was opened on January 14th. We're coming up on 30 days from that very shortly. If we wait another month, we're probably going to have to rebid it anyway. Possibly. I guess my question for the council is, do we want to take a very firm stance with them and award it to them because they are the low bidder? Do we want to rebid and be open to other options for trash recycling collection? Understanding that it may not be the most popular opinion among 7,200 residents of this city.
Is there any wiggle room in the 5-year contract?
There's always an out. Is that correct, Mr. Weeprick?
There is, yes.
Okay. Just keep in mind, if you want out,
Right.
you got to have an alternative. And the other bid here is not an alternative, in my opinion. That is a substantial amount of money. My understanding from Public Works, based on the previous bid competition for this and where we are now, what we're paying ecology services at this point is still less than what was bid by the other company back then. So I think pricing wise, it has been fair. I'm not complaining about their price. It's the service that's being received, but you get what you pay for, and that's exactly right. I will say, and I don't want to disparage a company, I really don't. They have many contracts around the state, I know that. Some in this county, and I've heard very mixed reviews from other municipalities in this county with this company as well. They've experienced the same problems we have. I just want council to think extremely long and hard over this, how you want to handle it. And as you've seen in the past, we always have the option to try again with the bid. But with that, there's a flexibility you may
Out
have
of
to have.
curiosity, you said that there were the multi-day pickup. What kind of numbers were we seeing for them?
They did not give us numbers.
none at
No.
all.
They
Okay.
chose, my understanding is that they contacted Public Works and said, if we bid it, it's going to have to be like this.
Okay.
And at the time, there was not an appetite to do so. And those numbers may come out extremely high anyway. We don't know. Just understand, if you want more options than these two, you're probably going to have to be more flexible with things like that. And understand, you're going to have to buy aspirin in bulk if you choose to go that route, because people will be unhappy.
I'm inclined to have a pre-meeting with expectations and go with ecology.
Okay. And that's something to think about before Monday. So just think all this over. I'll ask our liaison of Public Works, do you have any input from your discussions or anything, or even from Carol Vista perhaps, of their thoughts on this contractor?
Nothing that Not been mentioned.
Very good. Okay. I'd always like to hope that with a fair shake, things can improve. I do hope that with a certain firmness that can happen. I know in the past they do address our concerns rather quickly. Am I correct about that?
Yes.
I know Kevin will reach out to them as he receives complaints, and generally they're back, if not same day, the next day. I know at one point we had an issue with one of their employees that was addressed very quickly by them. So we'll have to say that they do take steps to mitigate the problems, but we do see repeated problems.
It seems as though turnover on the crews is an issue that you know, a problem is corrected, and then there's turnover, and then the new people, you know, fall into some of the, you know, issues that we had 2 months ago. So we generally, if we see a particular concern spiking, it's usually addressed. We see improvement, and then after a month or two, it may drift back depending upon if, you know, staff on that particular crew changes or that route. And there have been a couple instances where the route was altered from 1 week to another, and folks were, even though we tell folks, you know, they can start anytime after 6 a.m., you know, sometimes folks become accustomed to them not coming until 2 o'clock, and so they don't put their cans out the night before, and then 1 week they show up super early. And of course, that doesn't sit well with the residents.
Right, and that's not a fault of
and
ecology,
that's-
of course.
Right, and we try to tell everybody, you know, that it's, and we encourage folks to, you know, put their cans out the evening before. And some folks don't like to do that for various reasons, but that does tend to work.
I think to give them, to be fair to Ecology Services, some of the issues, vehicle issues, trucks break down, it cuts the day short. They have to come back. You know, things like that do happen. Especially in these times, being short-staffed will affect their ability to pick up in one day or what time of the day it is. And I'm not so concerned about, you know, someone's trash wasn't picked up at 10 o'clock in the morning like they expected. My main concern is the condition of the city when they leave the city. And if there's still trash out, trash spilled over, trash cans in the street as opposed to being returned to the sidewalk, that's a lot of the concerns that I mostly have. But Monday night, I'll seek a decision from the council as to what you want to do with this one. I don't believe this is the easiest bid to award out of this group, and I want everyone to think long and hard about it. Any other questions on this before we move on?
So should we
Yes.
decide on Monday not to go with this group, we'll be rebidding? And
The decision can be to rebid, yes.
And
Right.
we will determine in that rebidding what exactly we want. A
Regarding,
multi-day or,
if we're open to multi-day, I mean, we can give companies an opportunity to pitch to us a multi-day, if that's what they would have to do it. Of course, if that cost is $3 million and they still need to do a multi-day, well, that's not going to fly. There's a risk to this at rebidding, in my opinion. That risk is perhaps the low bidder now decides they don't want to deal with us anymore and they don't bid again. And now we're looking at
the higher bid.
all higher bids. There's some risk involved in that. Yeah, this is not a light topic. I need everyone's full attention to this for Monday evening so that you can make the proper decision and be confident with what you decide. Risks on both sides, in my opinion. But keep in mind, if we choose to stay with ecology, that's great. We will have a sit down with expectations and we will lay out and actually take advantage of the penalty format of the contract to ensure that we don't see the repeats that we have. Regardless of what we do, I do want to see Public Works implement some sort of tracking system for complaints. They can do that with a simple database with IT and just keep track of so we know in a month how many do we get and how many are the fault of the company and how many are not. And we should be doing that on anything of this sort. So think that over. Sleep well on that. Moving on, we have biosolids. The 2 bids were received, and the recommendation for Public Works is to award the 5-year contract to Synagro Central. And you can see from that it was a pretty good difference in prices there. Any questions on this one? Does everyone know what this even is?
I was seeking a definition for, so landfill disposals for emergency use under this contract, some examples of emergency use for biosolid.
Okay, let's start from the beginning. Biosolids is essentially what's referred to as cake out of our wastewater treatment plant. You do not put candles in it and have it on a birthday. This is the mostly dry product as a result of the belt filter press of the solid waste that needs to be disposed of in one way, shape, or form. The best way to do it, the least expensive way for us and the best for farmers, is that it gets spread onto farmers' fields. Of course, that requires significant permitting and such with MDE and EPA and all of those people. That's the cheapest way to do it. Company comes, picks it up, we pay them per ton. They take it to a farmer's field and they do whatever they want to do with it and they take care of it from there. The emergency is in certain times of the year, they cannot spread it on a farmer's field. If they do injection spreading, if it's really cold outside and the ground's too hard, they can't do that. There's also, if MDE says you can't spread on that field for X number of years because nitrates are off the charts, something like that, they could lose permits on those. Oftentimes with companies like this, taking to the landfill is their last option because it is extremely expensive, and oftentimes you have to travel further to the landfill to do that. So obviously, better for us, better for them, is that they can land apply. In the off chance it has to go to a landfill, you can see it does cost a good chunk of change to do that.
And so I assume the recommendation is based upon the land application being so much less for Synagro versus the other. It's just a percentage. We can look at it as ratios and divide up the year into seasons and think about possibly, 9 out of 12 months it would be a non-emergency.
Right. Well, and keep in mind that our wastewater treatment plant has been disposing of biosolids for years, and so they have ways of storing it and make sure it's cleared out before a deep freeze hits and things like that. And I believe they were looking for, did they already get a new building to better store their biosolids?
The storage building is relatively new. We expect to have some improvements in capacity with the dryer cake as a result of the new belt filter press.
And one of the issues they had with the antique belt filter press, it wouldn't get quite enough liquid out of it. And so when you go to pile it up, it just kind of runs out. With a more dry cake, you can actually stack it better and give you more ability to store more of it in case it can't get taken out right away.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? It's a topic I actually know about. I feel good about that one.
Have your cake and eat it too.
Layer cake?
Smith Island.
Anyway, questions? All right, then that one will be up for awarding on Monday evening as well. With that, I'm going to ask the gallery if they have any public comment on agenda items. I don't see a gallery still. With that, that brings us to the end of the meeting. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So, second.
Second. Motion from Councilman Fuller, second from Councilman Foster. All in favor of adjourning, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, say nay. Have a great night. See you Monday.